If there had been kids here, I might have said that a little bit differently. Our scripture reading this morning comes from the Old Testament book of Isaiah. It's chapter 2, verses 1 through 8, and also verse 22. This is a vision that lifts up God's hope-filled vision of the future, but it also contrasts that hope-filled vision for the future with the reality of where the people are in that moment. This is a reading that comes from a time several hundred years before Jesus arrived, when the idea of a Messiah was beginning to form among the Israelites, when the idea of a Savior sent from God was beginning to take shape among them. And this was the beginning of what that hope might look like, but also an acknowledgement of the reality of right now, the reality of not yet, the reality that we are waiting. This is from the book of Isaiah, chapter 2, verses 1 through 8, and then verse 22. Let us listen for the word of the Lord. The word that Isaiah, son of Amoz, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. In days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it. Many people shall come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways, that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations, and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk in the light of the Lord. For you have forsaken the ways of your people, O house of Jacob. Indeed, they are full of diviners from the east and of soothsayers like the Philistines, and they clasp hands with foreigners. Their land is filled with silver and gold, and there is no end to their treasures. Their land is filled with horses, and there is no end to their chariots. Their land is filled with idols. They bow down to the work of their hands, to what their own fingers have made. Turn away from mortals who have only breath in their nostrils. For of what account are they? Holy wisdom, holy words. Thanks be to God. Instruction shall come forth from a high place. The people shall stream to a high place, to the house of God, to hear the wisdom of God and God's people. Whenever the Old Testament refers to instruction, it's talking about the law. And so this morning we're going to talk about hope, and we're also going to talk about God's law. Now, in 1977, Tony Dungy was a rookie in the NFL, a safety for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Playing for Pittsburgh, he heard one unmistakable teaching, one clear word of wisdom and instruction from his coach, Chuck Noll, and his owner, Art Rooney. They stressed to the members of their team, don't just play for Pittsburgh. Don't just play for Pittsburgh. Be a part of Pittsburgh. Be a part of this community. Make a difference in this place. In 1977, during his first year in the NFL, Tony Dungy took that teaching to heart, and he strove to make a difference. First in Pittsburgh, and then in San Francisco, and then in the many other cities to which his playing and coaching career took him. In fact, in 1997, 20 years later, Dungy was the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he instilled in his players an unmistakable teaching, one clear word of wisdom and instruction that he'd heard from previous generations of football greats. He told them, don't just play for Tampa Bay. Be a part of Tampa Bay. Be involved in the community and make a difference in this place. In 1997, there was a first-year player for Tampa Bay who took that teaching to heart. His name was Warrick Dunn, and he had to work very hard to make it to the NFL. Dunn was raised by a single mother in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. His mother was a police officer who was shot and killed while off duty, working a security job at night to make a little extra money for her family because her police salary wasn't quite enough to make ends meet. Warwick Dunn was the oldest of the siblings, and when his mother died, they came under his care. He took care of them. So in 1997, when he began his NFL career, Dunn was ready to hear this teaching about helping others and eager to use his platform and his resources to make a difference in Tampa Bay. He started a charity, working with single mothers like his mom, working to make a difference for families like his own by furnishing houses provided by Habitat for Humanity. He recognized that when a family in need moves into a new house, that's a great gift, but it's only one step for them. There are many more expenses, many more hurdles to clear before the house becomes a home. What a difference it might make for a family to have those hurdles unexpectedly cleared, to move into a home that was fully furnished, with a refrigerator and pantry stocked to abundance, with computers to help the kids with their schoolwork. Any need that could be anticipated outside of the house itself, Warwick Dunn's charity set out to meet. During his rookie season, he helped 3 single mothers make houses into homes and begin new lives for their families. Today, his charity has helped over 350 families move forward. In 2007, 10 years later, the Watson family became one of the many assisted by Dunn's charity. The Watson family lived in Gainesville, Georgia, about an hour outside of Atlanta. Dunn was now playing for the Atlanta Falcons, and his charitable work had shifted to Georgia. There was a 12-year-old boy who was part of the Watson family. A boy with a strong arm, a boy with talent and ambition, the only boy his age who was allowed to play football with the older kids in his neighborhood. His name was Deshaun Watson. And when he and his family received their new Habitat home, he was thrilled to see a real NFL star, the Warwick Dunn, waiting there to welcome him and his family into their new home, waiting with unexpected gifts to help them transform that house into a home. Watson has spoken about the meaning of this move for them. He and his family had lived in public housing in a neighborhood that was relatively clean but bleak and felt hopeless. He lived in a place where not a lot of people get out of the neighborhood. The pressures of providing for oneself and providing for one's family lead many young men to drugs and crime. One young man who grew up playing football with Deshaun noted that every once in a while, a young man would get out, find a job or an athletic scholarship, something that would take him away from that place, but it so often fell through. And they wound up right back in the place where they started. Watson talks about the feeling of amazement and gratitude, walking around that new house and feeling overjoyed by the abundance of gifts his family had been given. Because of Habitat for Humanity, because of Warwick Dunn and his charity, Watson moved to a place where better choices were easier to make, and his family had the head start it needed to make good on that new opportunity. So let's fast forward another 10 years to 2017. In 2017, Deshaun Watson was a first-year player for the Houston Texans. And he didn't need to be told the ancient wisdom of football greats. He already instinctually knows what was passed on to Tony Dungy, what was passed on to Warwick Dunn. He already instinctually knows the teaching, the wisdom, the instruction. Don't just play for Houston. Be a part of Houston. Make a difference in this place. Watson donated his very first NFL game check, comprising tens of thousands of dollars, He donated his first NFL game check to 3 cafeteria workers at Houston's home stadium because each of those families had been impacted by Hurricane Harvey. He then partnered with Ashley Furniture to help provide furnishing for 197 homes that were hit by the hurricane, quite literally paying forward the gift that he himself had received. In our reading this morning, we heard, "In days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains and shall be raised above the hills. All the nations shall stream to it." In this context, the Lord's house is the temple in Jerusalem, which already stands on a high place. But in Isaiah's vision, the Temple Mount will rise above every other high place and will stand as a beacon, as a sort of lighthouse in the darkness for the people of the world. And we may imagine that when those people come to the Lord's house, they will find it to be well and duly furnished. Isaiah continues, "Many people shall come and say, 'Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways and that we may walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth instruction and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He shall judge between the nations and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore.'" For Isaiah, this is a sign of hope for the future, a reminder that whatever brokenness we and others may experience from the world, God is in control and will eventually come to set things right. On this holy mountain, the peoples of the world will come together, overcoming their divisions and uniting as one. There will be no more need for war. So the weapons of war will be melted down and transformed into tools for farming, swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. And at the center of this unity, this peace, this love, there is the law. There is instruction. There is teaching and wisdom pouring forth from this high place, teaching and wisdom for which the peoples of the world are longing. In the Old Testament, in the book of Isaiah specifically, but in the Old Testament more broadly, God's law is about helping those most desperately in need. Sometimes when we modern Christians think of the Old Testament laws, we think of arcane rules about food and clothing and relationships, rules that don't seem to apply in the modern world. But God's law is deeper and richer than that. God's law is essentially about treating everyone with the respect and dignity they deserve. It's about not using positions of power to exploit those who are already less fortunate. It's about active charity, about the call to make a difference in the place where you are. And in that way, it's not too different from the ancient instruction passed down by generations of good men in the NFL. Don't just play for Pittsburgh, be a part of Pittsburgh. Don't just play Bay, be a part of Tampa Bay. Don't just live in Parkville or Kansas City, but be a part of Parkville or Kansas City and strive to make a difference for the kids in our neighborhoods who don't feel they have a chance to make anything good out of their lives. How many Warwick Dunns and Deshaun Watsons are roaming the streets of Kansas City this morning, looking for someone to play football with, wondering if their lives can become anything more than the examples they see all around them? How might you make a difference for those kids? How might you offer hope to them? In the New Testament, Jesus says that God's law can be summed up in these two quotations from the Old Testament. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your mind and with all your soul, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments, Jesus says, hang all the law and the prophets. Second part of our reading this morning provides a contrast between the hope-filled vision of the first few verses and the broken reality of what Jerusalem was in Isaiah's time. In the hope-filled vision of a faraway future, God's law is so central to the lives of the people that they are lifted up and exalted by God. God's people become an example for others, a people whose lives are so shaped by love and respect and compassion that other nations stream to them, longing for a word of instruction, hoping to become like God's people. But in the reality of Isaiah's time, that is not who they are. Instead, they have forsaken the ways of their people. They are full of diviners from the east and of soothsayers like the Philistines. Instead of worshiping God, they turn to their own fragile superstitions. Instead of relying on God, they make deals with foreign powers, the same foreign powers who will betray them and sell them into slavery. Their land is filled with silver and gold, and there is no end to their treasures. But the treasure they actually need is the treasure of God's law, the reward of his wisdom and instruction. In the hope-filled vision, they are reminded of God's call to peace, but when God's people look for salvation, they turn from peace and turn instead to weapons of war, to horses and to chariots. They are in so many ways like us. How much of my own life is filled with material goods I don't need? How much of my time do I spend searching for my own answers rather than turning to God in prayer and striving to listen? Our reading reminds us to turn away from mortals who have only breath in their nostrils. For of what account are they? But how many times do we rely on the conventional wisdom of what people generally know rather than the law and instruction of God? On this first Sunday of Advent, we are reminded that our hope for salvation is centered around the law. Following God's law creates signs of hope by making a difference in the lives of others and showing the world what hope looks like, showing ourselves what hope looks like. But it also shapes who we are. It shapes who we are becoming. It shapes our perceptions. The law helps us to see how God is already at work, and it gives us the courage to go there and to join him, to help build a hope-filled future on God's glorious mountain. Amen.